Great advice. Megan?
Yeah, I just wanted to bounce back to how you talk about your experiences. That was great advice about showing that you have that child development knowledge, showing that you understand how children cope, you understand how children learn. Um, I wanted to bring that in light of the pandemic again. Before the last year, my impression from talking to internship coordinators in my role at ACLP was that there was more and more and more of a focus on interviewing candidates based on their previous hospital-based experiences, be that practicums, be that volunteering. That has shifted a lot in this last year. So, if you're able to get experiences in other types of settings with children and families, whether it's well children, whether it's children that have some kind of medical condition, right now, anyway, it's less important about whether those experiences are in a hospital or not, and more about how you talk about it. So if even if it's something, an after school program, if schools are in session and there's an after school program available to you, great. If you can talk about your experiences in the context of child development, in the context of how children cope, that is going a long way right now. I can't say that that's still going to be the case in another year, or who knows. Anyone trying to predict the future right now is just setting themselves up for disaster, so I will not do that. But I just wanted to add that note because it is an unusual situation right now that a lot of the experiences that we've always advised students to pursue in order to prepare for that internship just aren't available.
It's really good to hear that directly from an ACLP staff member that has the pulse on everything, because I think I have been saying that to students, we're all in this together. No one is getting volunteer experience in hospitals right now.
Right. And no one is going to hold you accountable for experiences that just do not exist right now. Students pursuing child life are in the hardest spot in all of this. And I really feel for you guys, because it was hard and competitive when I did it, and it has gotten way more competitive since then. And adding a pandemic is not making any of that any easier. So give yourself some grace. It's not about being perfect. It's about how you talk about the experiences you can have, whatever those are.
Perfect. Yes.
Can I just add something? I think a big part too, like you said, it's not about being perfect. I think I've seen sometimes students coming in like, I know everything. I know how to prep a kid for an IB. And it's a little off-putting as someone who had to go through so much and be like, you're here to learn. Like, we want to teach you how to do this stuff. Like, we want you to feel comfortable talking to a 7-year-old about an IB, but we don't expect you to know how to do that. Like, that's why you're here. You're here to learn, just like what Katie said. And I think you just have to speak of your own experiences and those, and really just how you speak about those. It's going to that's what's going to translate into your knowledge, not what you they'll ask you sometimes hypothetical questions, but just speaking again from your own experiences is important. And I think we've talked about how we'll have to look at internships.
Undergrad was definitely kind of learning the theory, some application, but I feel like my master's, and especially because I was doing it while I was working, it was so much clearer, the connections between what I was reading, what I was studying, and what I was doing. The other thing that I found really helpful with my master's was it's a master's in human development with an emphasis on social change. And at the time I was working in a hospital that had a very diverse patient population, a lot of first or second generation immigrants, just a completely different background than anything I carry. And so getting some additional tools to relate to those families, to approach them more mindfully, more respectfully, more inclusively, all of those things that are so important in healthcare, especially, the power dynamics in healthcare are just wild. And when you start adding other factors like, maybe not everyone in the family speaks English as a first language, and so you have that hurdle. Sometimes gender dynamics come into play, just the inherent power dynamic between medical providers and patients and families. Anyway, it can get very complicated very fast. So for me, getting some extra tools in my tool belt on providing culturally sensitive care was really important.
Sorry, Katie, do you want to go?
Of course, it's okay.
I was just going to second that. Like, I just felt like it made everything click. But I was also in this like weird, when I was after I graduated, I was in this weird phase where the ACLP was going to require masters at some point. There was like a deadline that they were like in I forgot what the year. There was, Katie, do you remember? I feel like we were in the same boat. We were like in this awkward thing where it wasn't required yet, but if we didn't get an internship right away, it might be required. And so we were like, we better just get it now.
Yeah, I don't remember what the year was, but I remember being told that like if you didn't have your master's, then jobs probably wouldn't be hiring because they're going to already be looking for people with masters. So it was kind of like you don't technically really need it yet, but like there's a possibility that it could make it more difficult.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. So, and then I think a lot of programs do require a master's for like internship. Getting an internship out of college when you're not associated with a college or a master's program was something I didn't really know. But once I got into it, it's like you have to have like independent insurance, and sometimes hospitals don't take you as an independent candidate if you're not associated with a program. So I was really glad I did my master's. At Erickson, they like have this. I think it's changed a little bit since when we went there. I think the program's a little bit larger. They only accepted like eight child life students at the time when Katie and I went through it. I think it's a little bit larger now, which is nice. And we could only apply at that time for Chicago-based internships. And now I think they can apply a little bit and like further away and everything. But it just like made everything so much, it just clicked everything. And it just opened up my view about some of the same things that Meagan was saying. I'm so happy I got my master's. I do think it is important. I know we go into this field because we love patients and we love families and kids and we want to make a difference. Getting a master's doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to get paid more. And I feel like, it's at the time that wasn't something I was like, I want to do this. It's child life. It's like the only thing I want to do. I don't care about pay. But as you get older, it does get a little frustrating that you got a master's and you might not be necessarily getting paid as much as probably you are. You should probably be getting paid a little bit more for like the qualifications that we have. And I think sometimes women don't always talk about salaries and income. So I think it's an important thing when you're considering what path to go down, because I think you can still be a great child life specialist without your master's degree. And if it's something that's financially feasible to you, I think go for it, because I don't regret it at all, but I do think it's something you should think about while you're making that decision.
And some hospitals will provide a stipend for continuing education. So that's something to also consider if you're going to go the route that many did, which was working and getting the master's degree. I know we want to get to a lot, but we only have 14 minutes left. So I want to open it up to the group. Anything you guys want to know more of? Any specific questions we didn't touch on? Don't be shy. They're a very welcoming group.
I have one question. So because of financial reasons and COVID and stuff, I'm taking a gap year next year. Is there a career path that you guys would recommend that would be like beneficial for my child life application or the internship applications and stuff?
I worked as a child life assistant. I don't know, not all hospitals have them, but before I did my internship at Comer, I was an assistant there. So I actually got paid, and I did their donations. I put away toys in the basement. I did like all the grunt work, but I got paid for it. So that was awesome. But not every place obviously has that. So I thought that it was a really cool experience if you're able to have something in your area. Also nannying, I feel like just like, again, you're working with kids, and even though it might seem like you're not, you in your head, you might not think you're gaining experience, you totally are. Just like being around kids and seeing them go through like just life, you just learn so much about them. And I did that all through grad school as well.
Between my internship and my first child life job, I worked for about 6 months at a preschool daycare. And, again, is it exactly child life? No, but anything with children and families, and you're going to see children and families on good days, on bad days, on stressful days. That's real life. And so being able to meet kids and families where they're at, diffuse situations, that comes up in all kinds of settings, not just the hospital. So I think that was a great experience. And when I eventually did get that first child life job, I had a lot of kids under 5 for a while there. So it was very useful to have some extra time with that age group.
Morgan, I worked I worked in a children's department store, or like a department store children's section. And I could speak so much to like child development in that example. So it really is true, like anything with children and families. What else? Anybody else? We can go back to the questions too. There's a lot of questions, and maybe you guys can speak to this. And I talk about it a great deal in our courses, but what's maybe the hardest thing about your job or your work in child life, and kind of where you find the work-life balance?
I can go first. I would say one of like the best things you can do for yourself is to like develop strong boundaries. Strong boundaries and like leaving work at work, whether like I don't have my work email on my phone because when I leave work, I don't want to know anything about work. I don't ask about patients. I like really try to really remove myself. And I know different people have different philosophies on it. So definitely like deciding what works well for you. But I think having really strong boundaries is really helpful. On top of that is really figuring out like signs that like you might have like compassion fatigue, because there are days where you give so much emotionally to patients and then I've gone in the next day and just been drained, and you need to like continually show up for your patients. So whether that's taking 10 minutes to have some water in between rooms, or like actually sitting and eating lunch versus like charting and eating lunch, like making sure you give yourself those small things and recognize what you need to be able to like regulate yourself in order to like be present for the patients, because that's what you're there for and that's like what you want to do, but making sure that you're not burning yourself out in the process.
I would second that on having good boundaries. So for my first job, I moved to South Florida. I moved away from everyone I knew, and all of my friends were other child life specialists, nurses, other people from the hospital, and we were working in pediatric hemonc. And it's great when it's great, and when it's rough, it's awful. And if I'm really, really honest with myself, part of why I made the jump and I'm doing the work I'm doing now is because I was burning myself out. I was good about leaving work on time, good about ending my day, but then my social outlet was still work people. And what did we inevitably end up talking about? So I cannot emphasize those boundaries enough. And some of that is just time and maturity. In hindsight, was taking a hemonc job after leaving my entire support system at my early 20s, maybe the best move, maybe not, but I mean, it got me here, so it's all good. But I think you have to know yourself and know what you can handle. If I were to go back to a clinical role tomorrow, I know now, even though I have way better boundaries now and way more life skills to manage things now,